During the final decade of his reign, King Henry VIII suffered profoundly from chronic health issues. The most debilitating affliction was a persistent ulcer on his leg, which caused him immense pain and limited his mobility. Accounts from the period describe how the wound festered, emitting a foul odor that attendants found difficult to tolerate. This physical agony likely contributed to the volatile temper and increasing paranoia that characterized his later years. Throughout the era, Henry VIII gained significant weight, making it increasingly difficult for him to move without assistance. He required mechanical devices to be lifted and transported within his palaces. His declining health impacted the governance of the kingdom, as he spent more time isolated and reliant on a trusted circle of advisors. Decisions were often filtered through these individuals, sometimes shaped by the king's unpredictable moods. As events unfolded in 1546, his condition worsened considerably. The leg ulcer remained open and painful, and other ailments plagued his body. He made his final public appearance at the state opening of Parliament on November 4, 1546. By this point, he was in severe discomfort and barely able to function. In the weeks that followed, his decline accelerated. He was confined to his chambers at Whitehall Palace, attended by physicians and servants. His counselors were hesitant to speak to him directly about his approaching death, a consequence of the king's legendary wrath against those who brought him unwelcome news. Archbishop Thomas Cranmer was eventually summoned. According to historical accounts, Cranmer found the king struggling to speak, barely able to respond. The king reportedly clasped Cranmer's hand when asked for a sign of his faith. Henry VIII died in the early hours of January 28, 1547. He was 55 years old, and his reign had lasted 37 years and 9 months. His death marked the end of a transformative period for England, leaving behind a kingdom forever changed by his will and his ailments. Following the death of King Henry VIII, his counselors kept the news quiet for several days. This secrecy allowed them time to consolidate power and prepare for the succession of his young son. The king's body, already ravaged by illness, deteriorated rapidly after death. Reports from the time indicate the leg ulcer continued to be problematic. Throughout this period of concealed mourning, preparations were made for the state funeral. The immense task of arranging the procession reflected the king's status. His body was embalmed and placed in a lead coffin, then sealed inside a wooden one. The coffin was carried in stages from London towards Windsor. As events unfolded on the journey, historical accounts describe fluids leaking from the coffin, a gruesome testament to the king's final physical state. This incident added a macabre note to the solemn proceedings. The elaborate funeral procession culminated at St. George's Chapel in Windsor. Thousands of mourners gathered to witness the final rites for the long-reigning monarch. Subsequently, King Henry VIII was interred alongside his third wife, Jane Seymour, as he had requested. His tomb lies within the choir of St. George's Chapel. His death paved the way for the coronation of his 9-year-old son, King Edward VI. A regency council, dominated by the king's uncles, assumed control of the government. Thus concluded the physical suffering and turbulent reign of one of England's most impactful monarchs. The era of his direct personal rule was over. With the accession of King Edward VI, England entered a period of significant political instability. The Regency Council, led initially by Edward Seymour, the young king's uncle, immediately began asserting its authority. During this period, the court witnessed intense rivalry between powerful figures vying for influence over the child king. Henry VIII's strong personal rule had held these ambitions in check. The religious reforms initiated by Henry VIII accelerated after his death. The councillors, many with strong Protestant leanings, pushed the Church of England further away from Roman Catholicism. This shift in religious policy was a direct consequence of the king's earlier break with Rome, though he had remained doctrinally conservative in many ways. His death removed the primary obstacle to further Protestant changes. Throughout the era immediately following his death, the public grappled with the end of a reign that had spanned nearly 4 decades. The absence of the king's formidable presence reshaped the political landscape entirely. The physical end of Henry VIII, marked by his severe illness and difficult final days, ushered in a new and unpredictable chapter in English history. His personal suffering had concluded, but its consequences resonated through the kingdom. The complex legacy of his reign, including the religious settlement and the consolidation of royal power, continued to unfold under the guidance of others. The era of the aging, ailing monarch was definitively over. During this period immediately following Henry VIII's death, the Privy Council, now acting as the regency for Edward VI, faced the significant challenge of maintaining control. Factions quickly formed around prominent figures. Edward Seymour, appointed Lord Protector, held the most power. However, his ambition and that of his brother, Thomas Seymour, soon led to conflict within the government. As events unfolded, this internal strife created instability at the heart of the English state. The strong, centralized authority that Henry VIII had wielded was fractured among competing interests. Abroad, England's position shifted. Without the formidable presence of Henry VIII, foreign powers like France and Scotland perceived opportunities to challenge English interests. Throughout the era of Edward VI's minority, England faced external pressures and internal dissent, including rebellions partly fueled by religious changes and economic hardship. The stability of the realm, so carefully cultivated by the previous king, was tested. The physical death of Henry VIII did more than just change the monarch. It fundamentally altered the dynamics of power and the trajectory of religious reform in England. The consequences of his final decline and passing continued to shape the nation for years to come.